Hey, good evening, everybody. Sammy Thunder here. Welcome back to the channel. You guys know I generally kind of stay out of some of the hobby talk that happens. I kind of focus a lot on the card shows, showing cards. That's kind of, really what I enjoy about the hobby. And so that's kind of always been my focus for my channel. But every now and then, certain things come up, certain topics come up, and I can't help but wanting to just to kind of share some thoughts on the matter. The whole premise with this SGC disappearing or retiring is obviously a hot discussion. Something that I don't really agree with. I don't think SGC is going to disappear, and I think this sort of topic is kind of, getting a little extreme. I understand the different concerns and the different theories and ideas as far as how and why SGC might disappear and what PSA is going to do and so forth. But I personally, seeing first off, SGC is backlogged in terms of the turnaround time, and they're still getting tons and tons of submissions. So it's kind of hard to deny a company just disappearing or going away over time when the demand is still very hot for them. People are still sending cards to them for a number of different reasons. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons why I don't think they'll go away, and it might be ridiculous to some, but the feedback when it is heard a lot is I like the way the cards look in the slab. And just the presentation of them hits a lot different than PSA. And to some, that might be a ridiculous reason to go with a grading company, but it is a factor nevertheless. And when you have enough people saying that, the companies are going to take notice. And so, why, if there's a lot of people saying I like the way the slab looks, why take that completely out of the market? You can argue and say that PSA might come up with their own slab, but I think because SGC has really established its footing as a top grading brand in the hobby, it's made its mark, in my opinion. And trying to replicate that in a secondary way through PSA, I don't think it's going to reflect very well if they decide to do that. But that's just, again, a possible theory that might formulate. But because SGC has created a very dedicated and loyal following over the many years that they've been around, I find it difficult to kind of just see them gradually kind of go into the sunset as PSA becomes the stranglehold company going forward. And, to kind of further support this, a lot of people talk about how SGC is the face of vintage, and the stats don't lie. Statistics show that yes, PSA grades significantly more cards than SGC does, and there's no denying that either. But I've seen it over many months. I haven't looked at it lately, but the one statistic I'm going to bring up is one that was generated via GemRate that was on Matt Falumley's website, Cardhound Vintage, and he posts these articles every now and then about the PSA SGC data for the month, as far as how many cards they've graded, what's the percentage. Obviously, like I mentioned, PSA's up here, SGC's down here in terms of overall submissions, but the interesting part to take notice of is the vintage aspect, what the percentages of the vintage are. So let me I brought a data sheet here. This is on Matt Falumley's page. It was generated, I think, through GemRate, and so this is back in February. This is what I could find. This was the latest article. I couldn't find anything sooner than that. But if you look at 1980s, again, we're looking at percentages, not overall submissions. But PSA has a 7.4% submission rate for the month of February, and you look at SGC, it's 11.7%. And then if you just go down the list, the percentages are completely in favor of SGC. The majority of what they're submitting is coming in with vintage. Now, again, I mean, the percentages and numbers are different. So, PSA's 2.4 might be very close to a 5.7. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't look at these numbers. But we can't deny the fact that there are a lot of people are submitting 11.7, 9.5, 5.7, 2.4. I mean, clearly the modern cards kind of dominate the market. You can kind of see it across the board, but you got to take into account that there is quite a big market for vintage with SGC, and it has shown month by month that the percentages are pretty steady. The last time I saw it was maybe about 6-8 months ago, but it seems as though that SGC's vintage submissions are consistently doing very well, and you can see the overall percentages. Even though the numbers are different, the percentages are definitely showing in favor of SGC as far as submission. So I don't think you can, if you're PSA, or if you're not PSA, but if you're looking at these numbers as an executive, and you have to come to a decision of whether or not to merge SGC into a global thing with PSA. To me, I just don't see it. For a number of reasons. Oops, hit my microphone by accident. For a number of reasons. I think people like the aesthetic of the design of the card, of the slab, and you have a dedicated, and I hear it a lot. I hear it at shows. I hear it in groups, and I hear it in chat and conversation. So, you gotta take that into account. I know it sounds silly and some might disagree, but you gotta take that into account. The other thing is that there's a dedicated group of people submitting vintage to SGC. It's just the percentages have been very consistent. So, trying to tell them all right, you're going to now have to submit everything over to PSA. We'll do a crossover for you. I think that's going to hit collectors. It's going to hit a sore spot. And maybe it's a speed bump, but it could be worse. All of this is really just speculation. The third thing is logistics. I mean, I'd imagine if they decide to move on from SGC and focus exclusively on PSA, if they decide to do that, they're going to have to be very, very, very clever and smart in how they do it. And again, all of this is speculative. To me, I think it's going to be very chaotic if they decide to go that route. It's going to be just a chaotic mess of collectors, thinking, oh my God, a number of different wild doomsday scenarios. Are my cards, the cards that I've submitted with SGC over the many years that I've been submitting, is this going to just lose value? I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think we're going to, if they decide to do this, I don't think our SGC cards are going to just completely drop off the face of the earth and lose their value entirely. I don't see that happening, given SGC's reputation and longevity and being a big player in the market. Even if they decide to go by the wayside, I don't foresee the value just dropping. But I do see a potential nightmare in logistics, in crossovers, and PSA is going to have to ramp up their production and have to. I mean, you're going to have a huge portion of people moving all their cards over, and to me, that just sounds like a logistics nightmare. And mistakes, I think, are definitely going to be made, and it's just it's going to stir up a lot more issues. So let me just kind of ultimately say this: is that what I'm talking about is really, again, it's all speculation, and I don't really know any more than anybody else does. I'm just kind of stating my opinions on the matter and giving my 2 cents on it. So however you want to take it is fine. But let me know what you think in the comments. So just figured I'd jump on and talk a little bit about this and see what you think. So thanks so much for listening, and I'll catch you guys soon. Take care.